Thank you for coming out today. We're going to start out with a quote from Fred Schmeeckle, and he's the namesake for the land that we're on today, now known as Schmeeckle Reserve. So people today are placing their wants above their needs, and through poor management, about 1/4 of our land has been destroyed in the United States. Unless greater strides are made in conserving natural resources, what will the situation be in a few years from now with the present steady rise in population? So this is a quote that I think still stands true today, and it shows why what we do here at Schmeeckle is super important. So welcome to the program. My name is Maddie, and I'm a senior environmental education practicum student. And I spent a lot of time in Schmeeckle Reserve throughout my time here at Stevens Point, whether it be for classes or just going for a hike with friends. And through my time here at Schmeeckle, I began to wonder, what was Schmeeckle like in the past? And so that's kind of how I chose the topic for today's program. So we're going to be talking about how Schmeeckle has moved from when it was logged off to when it was farmed and how it is now today in preservation. So we're going to be taking a short hike. We'll be pretty much on the trail, but there's some points where we get off the trail, so if you're uncomfortable, Jen can stay back on the trail with you. So I want you to think as we walk to our first stop, what would you feel if you came to Schmeeckle tomorrow and all the trees were gone? All right, we can get started. We'll head this way. All right, so when we left the pavilion, I asked you all how you would feel if you came to Schmeeckle tomorrow and there were no trees. Would anyone like to share how they would feel?
It's strange.
It would be strange. So that's actually what happened to this land. Back in the 1840s and 50s, the land of Schmeeckle Reserve was logged off, and the way that we can tell this is because of the close proximity of Stevens Point to the Wisconsin River. So the Wisconsin River was used as a major transport for a lot of those trees that were cut down here in Schmeeckle Reserve. But there's actually some more evidence here in the oak savanna that we can tell that Schmeeckle was logged off. So as you notice, there's a lot of big trees that are left standing. And so the oak savanna looked really different during the 1800s. There were probably lots more oak trees, but the ones that do stand tell a story. And so we're gonna walk on over to this tree and we're gonna do some measurements that are gonna tell us how old that tree is. So if you're comfortable, you can join me over here. So our forestry people do a lot of math, and so this is called a growth factor chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the DBH of the tree, which is the diameter at breast height of the tree, and then I'm going to multiply it by about 4, which is the growth factor for the red oak, and it's going to tell us how old this tree approximately is.
What happens if you're 6'6"?
You got to come down a little bit.
Oh, so
Yeah.
there is a height from off the ground. That's
Yep.
what I was.
So we have about 27 inches. So
What kind of
27
ruler is that?
multiplied by 4.
It's called a D-tape.
I was gonna say it's more than 27 inches around that thing.
27 times 4 is about 108. And so this shows us that the tree here is about 108 years old. So it's possible that this tree could have started from an acorn during the time where this area was logged off. So the oak savanna can give us a lot of clues about Schmeeckle's logging past. And as we're walking, I want you to keep an eye out for any other large trees or any other objects that may help to tell our next story. So we're gonna head on back down this way to our next stop. So after there were no trees, they had a twisted way of making money off the land. So the people that owned Schmeeckle decided to farm it. So there's evidence of both raising cattle and pigs on the land, but also using it to grow crops. And so this piece of farm equipment was used to till up the land As we can see here, this is kind of a higher spot because the soil of Schmeeckle wasn't really equipped for dealing with the planting because of how wet and how sandy it was. So I have some pictures here that I'll also share. So this is a picture of what Schmeeckle looked like in 1938, and as you can see right here, this is Highway 66, and you can see that it was kind of designated for planting different types of crops and for grazing animals. And then this is what Schmeeckle looks like today, so we can see that transition into preservation. And then this is a photo of a boar jaw that they found when they started digging up the amphitheater and the pavilion and started building there. So we are actually gonna head back onto the trail, and I'm gonna show you how terrible the soil was for farming here in Schmeeckle. So this rock pile is also evidence that Schmeeckle was farmed at one point. So a lot of times when they use the tiller, they dug up and they couldn't go anywhere because there's a high presence of rocks. So I have some different soil types here. I have some sand, which is the most common soil type here at Schmeeckle and is pretty much all over central Wisconsin. I have some clay, and then I have what is called a silt soil, and so it's kind of a mixture of both sand and clay. So before I do this, does anyone have a guess to which one they think is gonna hold the most water? The clay.
You think the sand?
Sand. All right.
I know.
So as we can see, the water actually soaked pretty quickly into the sandy soil, and it created a puddle in the clay soil. So what this shows us is that the sandy soil of Schmeeckle would not be ideal for farming because they would need to have lots of water on it at all periods of time, which is also why when you drive through central Wisconsin, especially in the summer months, you'll see farmers running their irrigation all day round because of the sandy soil. All right, so as we hike to our next stop, I would like you to think about how Schmeeckle has moved forward and how you have seen some of the beauty of Schmeeckle through preservation. So we're gonna hike back this way. So after farming, it took a little bit for the reserve to build back up, but eventually in 1977, the reserve became what it is today, and it was decided to be named after Fred Schmeeckle, which was the first professor of conservation here at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. But to get our minds thinking about preservation and beauty, has anyone had a moment in Schmeeckle or out in nature that they'd like to share that they just think was beautiful?
I like the lake during the nice late spring, early summer, when just wildlife is coming out with babies and such, and geese, ducks are flying everywhere, and right on the sunset.
I've been to Schmeeckle a lot at night. It is quite beautiful. You're just looking up at the stars, and one time the lake was frozen, and we went on the lake at night. It was quite lovely. Thought I was getting hypothermia, but I didn't. But just looking up at the stars at night after that was top tier.
Yeah.
I never said that.
Anyone else? So to help us encapsulate some more of this beauty, we're gonna do a short little game. So we're all gonna close our eyes and hold up 10 fingers. And in 2 minutes, we're gonna count how many different sounds of nature we hear. And we're gonna see how much beauty there is around us here at Schmeeckle. So you can go ahead and
most of yours down. So as we can listen, just by listening, we can hear all of those things that, by preservation, that this land has attracted the different types of birds. Maybe we heard some different frog calls. Not that annoying beeping sound that's happening over there, but that's part of where the reserve is located. So I'm gonna align that with the mission and vision of Schmeeckle. So I'm just gonna read this little part off, and you can think about how this matches the quote in the beginning of Fred Schmeeckle's vision for Schmeeckle. So the mission of Schmeeckle is a refuge to preserve, maintain, and restore native ecological communities of central Wisconsin. It is also research and education to serve as an outdoor laboratory for teaching and research, and to provide recreational opportunities for the campus and the community when those are not in conflict with the first two priorities of research and refuge. So we're gonna head over to the pavilion, and on the way there, I just want you to think about what you think Schmeeckle might look like in the next 200 years.
Alright, so would anyone like to share what they think Schmeeckle might look like in the next 200 years? It's a long time.
Well, just think about 50 years of it. It was like, well, even like 75 years before this wasn't really existing. So I don't know. Depending on how much the world has changed, I think relatively it might still just be the same.
Anyone else would like to say?
I'm just thinking whatever happens with climate change, it make a big difference on this forest
Yeah.
and the wetland. It could either be good or bad. I mean, the poor loons are having a hard time finding their way north this year.
Yeah.
The crash landing. A loon is not a duck. A loon can't walk on land, pretty much. They just don't. So when they take off, they're not like a duck that goes, you watch mallard, it goes like this, and then it goes. Loon, if you watch them on the lakes up north, they'll circle the lake, run the first 100 yards, start getting airborne, and then they have to circle some of it, and those are lakes that are like 100 acres. They'll circle them before they get enough altitude to get out. So this spring they've been having a little problem. There's still ice on up there, and they can't tell that. Black ice to them looks like water, and they're coming in and landing, and then somebody's got to go out there and rescue them. So
Yeah.
those are the things that are going to make a difference here, whatever.
Yeah. So it all comes back to people and how we're gonna make an impact on
Yeah.
the land. So overall today we've explored how Schmeeckle has gone from logging to farming, how it's more preservation, and we've thought about what Schmeeckle may look like in the future. So I want to end with a quote from Fred Schmeeckle, and so he said, "Someday this area will serve as an island of green in the city of Stevens Point." So I encourage you to keep thinking about how you think Schmeeckle will change in the next 50, 100, or even 200 years. So I appreciate you all coming out and taking a little bit of a tour of the history of Schmeeckle and looking at some of that concrete evidence to how Schmeeckle has changed over time. So thank you for joining me on this hike today. I encourage you to come out to the two programs tomorrow or